I'm thinking again about the Mary room problem in consciousness, which was developed by Frank Jackson. It's often said to be a thought experiment, but it isn't really a thought experiment. It's a kind of set of premises which prime your intuitions in a certain way. I'm sure you know it, but the 15-second description of it is: scientist inside a room, she has access to total knowledge, but she's only got a black and white monitor, and the room that she's in is black and white. She finds out everything there is to know about colour, and she steps outside the room and sees a red rose. Does she gain any additional knowledge from setting foot outside the room that she didn't gain in it? That's how it's usually couched. It's sometimes referred to as the knowledge problem, and it's been widely refuted, but as I say, it does prime our intuitions. The way that it's set up frames our thinking to suggest that there is a difference between the knowledge that one accumulates inside an environment like that and experience. It creates the impression of a division between knowing and experiencing, which doesn't really exist in normal lived experience or in any of the literature. But nevertheless, it's a powerful thought, a powerful idea. But I was thinking about a couple of things actually. First off, a kind of reverse Mary room I was thinking of, which helped me to think of it. You know, what would it be like, for example, if you took someone like myself? I've got colour vision, I can see the field is green and so on. You see the sky is more or less blue right now. And put me into a room in the one that Mary was secured within, you know, and I have access to knowledge, but it's a black and white room. I've got access to some total of knowledge now and forever on a black and white monitor. Just using those resources, can I reproduce in myself the experience of being out here? You know, it's a kind of reverse Mary. And I don't just mean reproduce through an act of recall, not just remembering of what the red of the rose looked like before I came into this room, but be able to, as I say, reproduce the experience on the fly. So I experience colour. I think it's a much more tractable problem, for reasons I'll come on to in a minute. But in a way, it also seems to me to resonate with some of the other things I've been thinking about, to do with the unweaving the rainbow thing. You know, the unweaving the rainbow is this idea that too much knowledge is a world destroyer. That we have a way of experiencing the world which is kind of undivided, non-analytical, doesn't know too much about it, is less concerned with the knowing and is more concerned with the experiencing. It's kind of primal almost. We have this. But if we find too much out about the world, if I know that the green in this grass is a result of the chlorophyll or whatever, then that somehow detracts from the greenness. The mystery is gone, you know, the curtain has been pulled away from nature, and now that I have it in black and white, I have the equations for all this stuff. When the rainbow has been unwoven and can never be replaced. I can never regain that primary experience. You know, almost as if that the way that the rainbow was unwoven was by its reduction to, you know, black writing on a white page, a kind of monochromatic rendering of this fantastically rich world in ways which just deplete it of any colour and deplete it of primary experiences. But as I've suggested, you know, that I don't think that's the case. Dawkins makes a large case for this in Unweaving the Rainbow, the book he wrote. Feynman did a great video about this, talking about flowers. The fact that we might, as I say, it's a kind of reverse of the Mary room, you know. There's an assumption that by going into the black and white room of our own thinking for a moment and analysing the world, being descriptive about it, finding ways to take it apart in different ways and put it back together again in different ways, doing all that involves a retreat from the world of experience into this totally separate realm of the analytical. But in the same way that the Mary room is a bogus experiment, a bogus thought experiment, it's as I say, it's a way of priming our intuitions. So I think the same is true of that sense of destroying the mystery of the world by by what might be perceived as retreating into analysis. That's not what happens. It's not what happens practically, you know. I don't think anyone who's you know, tried to understand things has ever found, as far as I'm aware, that their enjoyment of the original thing is destroyed. If anything, I'd say the reverse is true. But yet that intuition persists, doesn't it? And I think it's a bit unfortunate that those of us who like to think about things and analyse things and talk about things in different ways and be a bit creative about our engagement with the world, rather than what I would see as kind of passively accepting experience, are somehow having a lesser experience. I don't get that at all. I mean, just to return briefly to the Mary room, the reverse Mary room, the ERAM room. You know, if Mary, there she is, she's seeing the colours of the world. She goes into the room and she has access, black and white room, black and white monitor, access to the sum total of human knowledge now and forever. Then of course she'll know what colours are, she'll know how the eye works, she'll also have access to how pigments work, the chemical makeup of pigments. She'll also have access to how cathode ray tubes work and how colour guns work inside cathode ray tubes. She can just build herself a colour monitor, couldn't she? She has access to the sum total of knowledge. Of course she can reproduce the experience. In fact, she could make a rose if she wanted to. If she's got some total, if she's got access to that total knowledge, she could just grow some roses. And there she goes, she's reproduced the experience. And I think that's in a sense what we do, isn't it really? When we analyse things and try to describe things and try to get under the bonnet of our own thinking about things, we're not just experiencing the world, we're also, you know, trying to grow our own roses, trying to experience the world anew, trying to rebuild it in imaginative ways, reality test it, all those kind of things really, I suppose. I don't think anything's lost. I don't think anything's lost by that at all. In the same way that nothing is gained when Mary sets foot outside the room. There's no new knowledge gained, and there's no wisdom lost from the banishing of naivety. I'm reminded of a poem by T.S. Eliot. It's actually called The Rock, and he kind of makes the argument against what I've just been saying, but I think it's possible to reverse it. I can't remember the exact words of the poem, but it's something like, he asks, you know, what is the wisdom lost in knowledge? What is the knowledge lost in information? And, you know, he's asking the same kind of question that Keats did in the poem about Newton and the rainbow, saying, you know, we have this thing called wisdom or primary experience, and is something being lost when we transform that wisdom into knowledge, and is something being lost from knowledge when we reduce it down to information and perhaps on into data? It's a good question, and the answer would be yes if that's all we were doing. But you don't lose anything. You don't lose the wisdom by also transforming it into knowledge, do you? And you don't lose knowledge by recognising that there's also information that it consists of. And you don't lose information by identifying the individual nuggets of data which compose that information. So, yeah, we exist on all these levels, don't we? Yeah, we can be wise, and we can be knowledgeable, and we can have information, and we can recognise data when we see it. We can be outside the room looking at the flowers, and we can be inside the room understanding the way chlorophyll works. Because there isn't any room. There's no room. We're not confined to be in the room or out the room. It's a false framing of the situation. Clever old Frank Jackson framed it in a way which primed our intuitions to think of it in exactly that way. Very productive though. Actually, there's a collection of essays written about the Mary room, if anybody's interested, called something like The Problem with Mary. I'll find the Amazon link and put it in the description box. It's actually a nice day here today, look. Not bad at all.